Welcome, everybody. I know everyone is super excited about our topic today. We are talking about, is home birth right for you? So this is one of those things, especially with the pandemic, that all of a sudden people who weren't considering home birth before are now. So we are going to talk about that with a local midwife and also someone who has chosen home birth for themselves. First, though, we got some housekeeping stuff to go through here. First of all, remember this is an expo, and normally we would have you interacting with our vendors, but we can't do that because of the virtual aspect. So do go to our website, loveyourbirth.org, and you can see a list of all of our vendors there where you can check out people. So especially if you are expecting or wanting to add to your family, we've got some good resources for you in there. If you don't have a ticket for this event already, do go to Eventbrite to get a ticket. You can also reserve a swag bag. I think we have 4 or 5 left, so there's just a couple, but you can get yourself a swag bag. Pickup for those is going to be next Saturday on October 17th at Caraway Park. We'll be there from 12 to 2, and if you are a family that would like to reserve a drive-up or a curbside pickup, we can do that. We'll do that from 11 to 12, but we do ask that you send us a message on Facebook so that we can reserve your time. We don't get the streets too crazy out there. The next thing we have on our list here is our doula training scholarship. So typically when we hold an expo, we are a nonprofit here at Love Your Birth. So all of the funds that we raise go back into the community. We, in the past, have done a doula grant to help families pay for a doula. But right now, because doulas are not quite as accessible, especially in a hospital setting, so right now, those funds are going towards a doula training scholarship, and we especially want to extend that to underrepresented communities. So Black, Indigenous, person of color, LGBTQ community, anyone who feels like they fall into that underrepresented category. You can apply for a scholarship on our website, again, loveyourbirth.org/scholarship. And those applications are due November 15th. So if you know anyone who wants to become part of the birth community, please let them know about that. We want to include them, and we want to build this community even more. If you would like to donate to that cause and help us fund scholarships, we have enough for 2 right now. If we get some extra support, we might be able to squeak out a 3rd. You can donate on our Facebook page here. There's a little donate button. You can also donate on our website, again, loveyourbirth.org. You can also set us as your Amazon Smile charity. Prime Day is coming tomorrow, 13th and 14th. We're going to have Prime Day. So before you spend all of your money Christmas shopping, go and set your Smile charity for Love Your Birth. We have a post on our Facebook page of how you can do that. You can also do it directly on your desktop by going to smile.amazon.com and then select Love Your Birth as your charity. The other thing that you can do is buy a shirt. So especially for our birth workers, if you want a cute new shirt, we have a bonfire shop. Oh, Mila has a shout out. Yay! If you want to get a shirt, you can go to our bonfire shop and order a shirt. Anyone who orders a shirt is going to be entered to win a physical copy of the game Down the Canal. So if you're wanting to get into childbirth education, this is a great little tool for you to have, and you can get a fun new shirt, and money comes back to us. So win-win-win all the way around. So Annie, would you like to tell everybody how they can win prizes from our event today?
Yes, active participation today. Go ahead if you are watching right now and type in Target or Travel System if that is one of the prizes you would like to win. Also, after our live, if you can't watch right now and you were aware of it, you can listen for our key word, which will be said sometime throughout the conversation today, and then you can fill out a Google form that will be in the comments afterwards.
And if you're just joining us for the first time, you can also go back to the beginning of the expo. So we started with a kickoff last week, Thursday, so you can find those events on there, find that keyword, and you can still get entries in to still win either that Target gift card or the Travel System. And I've personally not been keeping track of Google entries, but I have been doing the live entries. You have a really good chance of winning that Travel System. We don't have a whole lot of entries for that one.
Yeah.
Everyone's going for Target. And if you've already entered, you can switch up your entries. You can enter for Target on others and enter for the Travel System here. So yeah, you can bounce that around however you would like to.
Multiple ways to win, and especially with going back.
Yeah. So definitely go back and find some of those old videos there on our Facebook feed. So we're super excited for what we have today. Tonight, we are going to be doing our last round of Kahoot. So we're using that Down the Canal game. We use that to build an online Kahoot for people. Jennifer's laughing because I think you have older children who are distance learning and you're familiar with Kahoot.
Do we get Jolly Ranchers?
I don't have Jolly Ranchers for this one, but we do have some prizes. So our first place prize tonight is a cute little top knot hat and swaddle blanket from Copper Pearl. So you can win that and then have a cute little blanket and matching hat for some pictures for your baby. So join us for that tonight at 7. Again, get that Eventbrite ticket. That's how you're going to get the Zoom link to join that. It will be live in the fact that it will be in real time, but we won't be broadcasting it on Facebook. All right, are we ready to go?
Yeah.
I think we might be ready. I'm going to do some bios. So what I have here, if I open my right. Yes.
Okay.
So
let's do some introductions.
Yes.
We're so thrilled
oops,
to have Mila join us today. Mila Burgess-Conway is a licensed professional counselor, activist, advocate, awesome wife to Mike, and a proud mom to IO. Whether in her personal or professional life, she truly loves partnering with others on their journey to self-discovery and personal freedom. Mila is an eternal optimist, which I love. I love that. So when everything sucks, she's just always there looking on the bright side. She believes that a life of gratitude is everything. So, and we're so grateful that you're here.
Hey, hello. Thank you for having me.
And then we also have Jennifer Lucas O'Brien, which we're super excited to have. Jennifer is a certified professional midwife and a licensed midwife licensed by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. She studied psychology at the University of South Carolina and also studied at Darla Luz, the School of Midwifery. She received her certification through the North American Registry of Midwives. So if you've heard people talk about the NARM, she took the NARM, she passed the NARM. She served as vice president of the South Carolina Birth Coalition and has been a public advocate in legislative and regulatory proceedings for consumer access to licensed midwives and birth centers in the state. So we're really grateful for that advocacy work. While serving as a CAPA-trained birth doula, she also worked at the Covenant Birth Center, apprenticed and studied for 7 years across the state before opening her own practice, Columbia Midwifery. Jennifer has 3 children, 2 of which were birthed at home. As a VBAC mom herself, she is passionate about VBAC rights and access. She is currently proud to be serving as a home birth midwife and montrese for low-risk women of her community, which is right here in Columbia, obviously. And she looks forward to expanding her practice into public education and consultation so that clients may have the option of midwifery care anywhere. So thank you, Jennifer, for joining us.
Having me.
Yay. So let's dive in. One of the things I know you were wanting to talk about, Jennifer, and I think a lot of consumers might be curious about is what does that look like in terms of the education and the background of a midwife? So what does it mean to be a certified professional midwife and to be a licensed midwife, and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, thank you. So from state to state, midwifery looks different. And in South Carolina, we are blessed to have a flurry of options as far as maternity care goes, even if we don't know that we have them. But, you know, there is that saying that says, if you don't know your options, you don't have any. So we are, as part of the state group of midwives, we are very passionate about letting people know that we are here. We have been here for a long time. We are educated. Because it is quite surprising when we find out that so many people don't know about home birth midwives.
We've had home birth midwives in South Carolina for a number of years. When did that at first start? The 70s? 80s?
Yeah, no, we've had home birth midwives since the beginning of South Carolina, right? So we need to talk about the fact that we've always had traditional midwifery. That's always been a thing. And a lot of times those were women of color that served their communities and that came in around the 1920s. Of course, we had a campaign against midwifery nationwide. It said, you know, the queen and everyone else is going to these gleaming white sterile places of hospitals. You should too. How dare you have your baby with this dirty, you know, midwife? And they would pick. They would put pictures of old women with gnarly warts and, you know, and and just really drive home a campaign of midwives as witches, essentially. So that was a very successful campaign, so that in the 1910s, 90% of births were attended at home. And then by the 1920s, that transitioned into 60% of births were attended in the hospital. And now only 1% of births are attended outside of the hospital. So that was a very successful campaign. But around the several revolutions that were happening in the 60s, people started to get more educated about natural birth, and they wanted to go back to that. And so in the 80s, South Carolina became one of the few states that were looking at standardizing their licensing procedures for midwives. So licensed midwifery has a long history here in South Carolina, but of course midwives have a long history everywhere. So I just want everybody to be clear on that. But so currently in 2013, what SEDHEC did was to standardize our education to make sure that we were all, home birth midwives were all CPMs. So that stands for the Certified Professional Midwife. And they are certified by NARM, like you said. And NARM lists on their website that process takes an average of 5 to 7 years. And then we sit for sorry, my phone's blowing up as we talk. No one's in labor though, we're okay. I'm sorry, that takes about 5 to 7 years, and then we take the national board examination of the NARM exam. So when we go back to that term, I don't know why I can't silence it. When we go back to that term of lay midwives, which is something that you may have heard before, we get a little salty at that, because a lay person is somebody who is untrained, is unskilled, is uneducated, right? So to call us lay midwives, like, I don't know who you're talking to as a lay midwife when I studied for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
So in some states, CNMs are the ones that are attending the majority of out-of-hospital births.
Okay.
In some states, CPMs are the ones that attend the majority of out-of-hospital births. And in this state, it is CPMs.
Okay.
Our CNMs can still work in the birth centers, and they of course still work in hospitals. But CPMs in South Carolina are the expert in out-of-hospital birth.
Yeah. And CNMs, as far as scope of practice, could do an out-of-hospital birth. They just typically, South Carolina culturally don't. Is that?
It is a little different with their ACNM board here. We're starting to see some fusion of that, where some CNMs are sitting for their NARM and becoming CPMs.
Okay.
And so then there's really nothing that can stop them after they do that to become, if they are both CNMs and CPMs. Okay. So I have known of a couple of CNMs who have done that. Okay. I've also known CNMs years ago that chose to give up their CNM to become a CPM so that they could do home births in South Carolina. Gotcha. So there's a little bit of gray area back and forth there.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, in South Carolina, you have the choice between CPM, CNM, or a doctor, and you have the choice of birth centers, home birth, and hospitals. And not every community in South Carolina has a birth center. But as far as South Carolina goes as a whole, we're pretty privileged to have all of those options.
It's true. It's true. We do have more options than some other states have in terms of legal stuff. So that's always helpful. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So that kind of leads me into, I'm looking at the wrong email. Man. That's fine. But tell us a little bit about who you are. We know about who you are and who CPMs are and who might be attending births at home, but tell us about who those pregnant people are at home. Like, what makes them a good candidate for a home birth versus not a good candidate for a home birth?
Sure. Yeah. So, I'll tell you, like I tell people when they come to my consultations, um, there's no doubt that we do have some disadvantages being at home, and that we have some resources that are not available to us that are available just down the hall if you were to deliver in a hospital. And those resources mainly include blood products if a woman were to bleed too much, and an OR. Okay, so those are two resources that that the OB world has at their disposal when something goes wrong. So at home, even though we believe that birth is normal and that that women our bodies are made to do this, we of course always want to set our clients up for success, and our primary responsibility is the safety of mom and baby. Mm-hmm. So in order to do that, we need to make sure that these home birth candidates are prime, healthy women, healthy pregnant people who are delivering at home. And that needs to be that they have no major medical issues, they have no heart defects, no diabetes, no history of extensive infertility or pelvic surgeries, no prior cesareans, although we'll talk about that a little bit further. So as of right, yeah, we'll dive right into that. But that is a little bit of a gray issue that I have some notes on that. So put an asterisk by that. Okay. No seizure disorders, no clotting disorders, no history of obstetric complications in previous pregnancies, and no other health issues, major health issues. So, and then
type 1 or
down,
type,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you're talking about diabetes, are you talking about type 1 or type 2?
Or gestational?
So both. And then gestational diabetes is something that we address within the pregnancy and hopefully prevent throughout our care. So, and then with each midwife, we have different practice guidelines and what we each believe is acceptable to take on as a client.
Right.
So
your own risks too. So
say that again. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a delay.
You're taking some of your own risk, right? As a midwifery provider, that each midwife might have some personal preferences as to their personal risk tolerance. Exactly.
So with those resources that we think about that we don't have right down the hall, mm-hmm. In the hospital, if you tear, no problem. They will sew you right up, and they're happy to sew you up. In fact, they'll sew you up even if you have a tear or not. If you bleed too much, they have blood products. If you have a large baby, they're happy to offer you a cesarean if they think that your baby is too large. So my main job happens way before the birth. It happens in counseling these pregnant people and as to how we can prevent those situations from coming up to begin with. Mm-hmm. Setting you up for success the entire 9 months before your birth. So a lot of people don't realize that a lot of that has to do with nutrition. Mm-hmm. So at my first consultation with my clients, I tell everybody, how, and one of the stories that I tell is that my midwife told me that dark raw leafy greens have nutrients in them that lead to elasticity in your tissues. Elasticity means that you will stretch rather than tear. And, so when she made the point that dark raw leafy greens equal my vagina not tearing, I started grazing at every single meal. So I try to drive that point home to my couples at our very first meeting and, make it, make that point to begin with. But there's also so many benefits of eating well, being overall healthy throughout your pregnancy already. You need good endurance for labor. Labor is a marathon. The uterus is a muscle. You need so much water. We need half our weight in ounces as a minimum of water intake every single day so that your amniotic fluid has what it needs to replenish itself every single day. You need a strong uterus. You need well-nourished tissues that will contract efficiently, that will not only give you an expedient and efficient labor, but also keep you from bleeding too much afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things about nutrition are extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people whenever I consult with them, and this may be somewhat controversial, but if food is a trigger for you, if it's something that you do not want to talk about, if you feel like you are unwilling or unable to put in the work nutrition wise, then my practice may not be for you. And that's just how it has to be, because we see that so much difference is made in this nutrition counseling. Most OB appointments are 5, maybe 10 minutes long. My visits, I have not, Mila can attest to this, I have not figured out how to get them any shorter than an hour and a half. I cannot. We have so much to talk about. We have so much to cover. So that's important. So, that's a little bit about how I help to gauge the risk of my clients and help to try to set them up for success and keep them low risk throughout their pregnancy.
All right. Excellent. Excellent.
That's awesome.
All right. So tell us a little bit about what things have looked like for you. So obviously pandemic has kind of thrown everybody for a whirlwind, and like you've probably got people coming to you that weren't coming before, and we're now talking about the risks of COVID during pregnancy and during delivery, and what do prenatals look like now? What does delivery look like now? Like,
can we also, have you seen an increase of home births?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have talked to some midwives in the state that haven't seen much change, but here in the Midlands, I don't know what's going on, but we are a hot spot for an increase of home birth, and it's great. I'm so excited about it. But at the beginning of this, I had 16-hour days where I was just trying to consult with people. I was taking everyone in for a consultation, and I was telling them, and we were going over their options as far as home birth goes, because no one wants to give birth alone. And that's where some of the fear tactics, and not just tactics, but reality was that there was a fear of having to give birth all by yourself. No one wants to give birth alone, and nobody wanted to give birth in what they felt like was a hotbed for this virus that we didn't know so many things about. Right. And those are valid fears. But after having 16-hour days of consultations and talking to people, and some of them absolutely were not good candidates for out-of-hospital birth, and I had to tell that to them, and I had to break that to them. But I still tried to offer them the leafy green story or whatever else to try to tell them, to see them have their best birth. Yeah. But I've come to a place where I don't want anybody to do anything out of fear, even if it's fear of this virus, right? So we can't have it both ways. We don't want our clients and our mothers being scared into options that they may not know that there are alternatives. And I also have started telling people, please remember that there have always been viruses in hospitals. You have always had a 1 in 3 chance of delivering a baby alone. When you walk into the hospital and you have a 1 in 3 chance of having a cesarean with our rates the way that they are right now, and dads aren't always promised to be in the OR with mom. So, I just want everybody to kind of look at the whole picture and not be scared into home birth, because it's not an option for everybody. Some people still need an epidural. Some people need pain relief and want pain relief, and they should have it. Some people, who are, for example, sexual trauma survivors, they absolutely need pain relief in many cases, and should be given that option to have either surgical birth or medicalized birth, wherever they will be most comfortable and the least amount of trauma will be associated with their birth. So we need to look at this as a whole picture. But to answer your question, yes, we've been crazy busy. And at the beginning of this, I tried to expand my practice a good bit. Before I was taking two clients a month because I have 3 children at home. My competition and my friends, my colleagues here in town, their children are grown. So they have always been able to take a few more clients than I have. But at the beginning of this, I thought, I'm seeing my kids plenty. And, they're all at home with me now, so I can take more clients. So I went from 2 a month to 4 and 5 a month, and my colleagues went from 4 and 5 a month to 6 and 7 a month. And we've had, and we've still had to turn people away.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we've seen, yes, a great expansion. And most everybody has done really well. But I have heard stories, not in my own practice, but I have heard stories of some people who have transferred because, home birth wasn't really what they wanted to do to begin with. It was just kind of something they felt forced into. So I'm focusing right now on trying to counsel anybody who comes across my door and make sure that's something that they really, mind, body, and soul want to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What
Got
about
a few Facebook comments that are kind of cute for the things you said.
Oh, yeah.
Kylie says, I ate so much kale. No tears here. So, and then Jessica says, hospital policies in regards to COVID-19 probably impact women's decisions in having a hospital birth. I overheard a couple of moms talking about that in the waiting room during a doctor's visit. So people are talking about it out there. Pregos have concerns. Like, speaking as one. We have thoughts and opinions of what's going on.
So we're gonna pause right here and go along with our kale leaf segue and give our Scott prize.
Oh.
We have a box of red raspberry leaf tea, supposed to be super great for toning the uterus and getting you all ready. So in the comments, first person to comment with their favorite tea will win this box of tea. And we'll let Rachel handle that on the social media. Jennifer, what have you been doing that policy-wise and like active during prenatals and during labor and delivery that you weren't doing before? What are we talking about in terms of masks and attendees and people involved and social distancing? Like, how has all of that impacted what home birth, prenatal care, and labor and delivery care look like?
Yeah, great question. So it's changed a few times over the course of the past several months, but we do know that masks lower our risks of transmission. So whoever is on my team is absolutely wearing masks at all times when we are attending to clients. And we encourage them to wear masks. I have them wear masks in my office, but at home for their home birth, it's a little bit more of what they're comfortable with. But we as care providers will always be wearing masks. I have split up my appointments a little bit more so that they're not back to back, so that people aren't running into each other when they're coming into my office. You have a good 15 minutes between one appointment and the next, so that people aren't even really passing each other, even though I have my own separate entrance into my office so that they can come from the outside, wait on the outside if they need to. They're waiting in the cars if they happen to come at the same time where someone has run over or they come early. We're cleaning the office in between appointments, the office and the bathrooms, and we're having them limit the visitors that they bring with them. And we're doing more telehealth visits. So in maternity care, that is something that we have realized is a tool, and it can be utilized. So I'm teaching my clients at their prenatals, just in case if anyone were sick, if I were sick, if we had to cancel a prenatal appointment for whatever reason or make it a telehealth visit, I'm teaching them how to measure their fundus from the top of their pubic bone to the top of their fundus and how to get that data. I'm encouraging everyone to buy their own blood pressure cuffs just in case, again, if somebody had to cancel an appointment or if we had to move to telehealth, so that we can get that number, because blood pressure is something that we cannot miss out on reading at each appointment. And we're talking about an active baby. So instead of listening to heart tones if they had to cancel an appointment, we want to make sure the baby is moving actively and that they are showing us that they are healthy and well. And I'm really encouraging everybody to stay home and socially distance and be as safe as you can out in the world if you have to go out there. So everybody has their own cluster. Everybody has their own family unit. Yeah. So everybody has their own bubbles, and those look different ways. But you know, for instance, I'm now part-time caregiver of my mother-in-law who has cancer. So you know, I don't need a client coming in making me or my family sick. We have chosen, even when we were given the option of schooling in person, I chose to keep my kids virtual at home so that I'm limiting their exposure within my household to help protect my clients. Mm-hmm. So I'm asking everybody to do their part and do what they can. What I don't really tolerate is people who refuse to wear masks at all, and you know, and risk transmission for other people. And also, we just talk about a healthy lifestyle, and that's what you're going to get out of your crunchy midwives anyways. So we're talking about making sure that your levels of D3 are high, and hopefully that you are taking D3 with K2. That's a better way for the body to absorb it. D3, K2, magnesium and calcium all work as a little bit of a tripod to make sure white blood cells are coming out of your bones and back into your bones the way that they're supposed to keep your immune system running the way it's supposed to. D3 keeps your viral levels low. So between my consulting MD and I, we have my clients on between 5,000 and 10,000 IU a day, and depending on their risk factors. And we may even up that if they feel like they're coming down with something or if they're actually sick. We're making sure that everybody is eating clean, fresh fruits and vegetables, lean meats if you are omnivorous, and that you are exercising, and that you are practicing good hand washing and you know, good hygiene, making sure that you are lowering your risk of transmission of anything at the same time. I have seen a number of cases where people are falling through the cracks in the medical system right now. There is a lower, they have lowered their staff in many cases, and people are overworked and they are underpaid and they are exhausted all over everywhere right now, of course, in any profession, I'm pretty sure, but also acutely in the healthcare professions. And I've also seen people be, you know, care providers and care teams be extremely scared of the virus and push people off and try to pass the potato and pass something off as COVID when they didn't even know that whether or not it was COVID. So whether it has been in maternity care or in my own life with my own family, I've seen, you know, people really suffering without being able to advocate for themselves. So I'm telling everybody, you know, make sure that you are advocating for yourself. Make sure you are being honest. You have a care provider that you are able to be open and honest with, somebody that you have access to, somebody who is going to believe you. That's a huge problem in the disparities that we have across maternity care. And, you know, make sure that you have a care provider that you feel confident will support you and be responsive to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So much good information here. All right, so we kind of already talked about this a little bit. I think that I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask you this question anyways. What are your recommendations to expectant parents looking to minimize or maximize their chances of maintaining a low-risk pregnancy? I feel like it's going to be nutrition related.
Yeah.
Just a little guess.
Yeah, so make sure you're exercising as well.
Mhm.
I've known so many people who throughout my life, and admittedly so for my own pregnancy, my first time around, which, I'm not really blaming my 21-year-old self, but she ended up with a C-section at the end of it because she didn't know all of her options and what she needed at that time. So, but you need to not treat pregnancy as a license to eat. It is training for a marathon. We need to make that paradigm shift for every woman. So, and every pregnant person. So you need to be exercising. You need to be knowing what your blood levels mean. Why are we getting blood levels from women? When you go into a doctor's office, you do a prenatal panel, you just give them your blood. You don't know why'd you give them your blood? Wonder what it means. What do those levels mean? Were my levels good? Could my levels be better? What can I do to make my levels better? So if you're feeling out of breath and you're feeling like crap, and let's check your hemoglobin. Let's see, what your levels are at and what we can do to fix those. There are things that you can do supplement wise to support a good hemoglobin. There are things that we can, of course, do nutrition wise. You need to be exercising with cardiovascular exercises every day, hopefully every day, 5 times a week. I'll accept 3 times a week, but you need to be getting your heart rate up 30 minutes a day, around 5 times a week. Not just moseying down the street, certainly not reclining back in a chair and changing the position of baby to where they can be OP. There's so many things that we see a woman do, just waddling down the street, reclining in her chair, eating whatever she wants. And unfortunately, no one is telling her that, that she's setting herself up for less than success. So we want to talk, you need to have a care provider who can talk to you about what you can do to make sure baby is in the optimal position for labor. Those things include going to a Webster certified chiropractor, making sure that you are taking good care of yourself within the means that you have, looking into seeing, what your if you're covered by Medicaid, there are chiropractors that take Medicaid. We didn't know that before. A lot of people didn't know that. Exercise, good nutrition, hiring a midwife if you can. I mentioned in my bio that that I do monitrice work.
Yeah.
So not everybody, like we said, is a good candidate for out of hospital birth. So should that woman only have those 5 to 10 minutes of, those visits where they don't know what their blood levels mean, and they don't have time to ask their providers those questions? Hopefully you can look into hiring a midwife as a monitrice who can maybe be your midwife at home, and then your doula in the hospital. If and when we allow doulas to come back into the hospital, right? Also, doulas are very important. Setting yourself up for success with making sure that you have good support there. Going back to my COVID policies, right now, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that we need to limit the number of people that are at the birth. Father-in-laws and great uncles and all of that shouldn't be there anyways. But also, if I bring an assistant, she's also a doula. Or is your photographer also a doula? Or, how can we combine the roles a little bit so that we can limit the number of people that are there? Mm-hmm. So doulas, good childbirth education, exercise, drinking lots of water, and just participating in a healthy lifestyle to take care of you and your baby. And protecting your peace mentally and emotionally.
So we do have some Facebook questions in that same vein.
Okay.
Sandra Rivas says, what about green leafy veggies aversions? And then added, by that I mean I'm pregnant and raw veggies literally make me vomit, with crying emojis.
I understand. So that's very common. And I would be curious to know how far along she is. So a lot of women do have green leafy aversions in the beginning of their pregnancy. And that makes sense because a lot of our fresh fruits and vegetables and what is in the dirty dozen of produce that is very susceptible to disease. So there is an evolutionary reason why you have aversions to leafy greens at certain times in your pregnancy. Sometimes that could be keeping you safe. Often I will have a rash of women. This is just anecdotal evidence. This is not evidence-based, guys. So often I personally will have a rash of women who have an aversion to leafy greens. And then the CDC will come out and say that they have an outbreak of listeria in certain leafy greens. And so we have super senses when we are pregnant that, something smells off. There's a reason why you have that super sensor, to sniff that out. So I would say avoid what your body is telling you to avoid at the time, but try it again. Try to do organic if you can afford it, if you have access to that, but try to introduce it again. Also, mask it into a smoothie if you can. There are also organic super green powders that you could add into your smoothie that you'll get credit for that way as well, instead of just chewing and chewing kale. I get that that's a problem. It's hard to digest as far as the chewing process goes. You can massage kale with oils as well to help break down the enzymes. But I would just encourage someone like that to reintroduce the foods again when you're having aversions.
Very helpful.
Excellent. Since we're talking about food, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do our other spot prize. Our last spot prize of the day. So this from Inspire Speech and Feeding is an early kit. So it's got a plate in here, a bib, some cups that are SLP approved for great oral motor skills. So this is going to go to our first commenter who tells us their favorite healthy food. I'm going to go on with Jennifer's healthy food kick. So favorite healthy food in the comments, bonus points if it's a green leafy vegetable, and then you will win that. Mila, we've been neglecting you this whole time. I'm so sorry. We just had so many things to talk about. But let's talk to you for a second. So you have had a home birth. You're it's almost 2, you said. So it's been a minute since you had your birth. You've had some time to process it and think about it and reflect about it. So just tell us a bit about that process and why did you choose a home birth? What made that the right decision for you and your family?
Sure. Well, if hearing Jennifer with her immense knowledge and evident compassion does not convince you as to why, then I don't know what else to say.
All day, right?
Our hour-long consultation meetings with her were just some of the highlights of my time during pregnancy. Just so much information and care, and really the exact opposite of what we had experienced at a local hospital. I won't say where, but we did spend the first 20 weeks, getting prenatal care at a hospital while also seeing Jennifer because, we wanted to just kind of make sure things were going smoothly, get the genetic testing, all the things we could do to add to what she was saying around, making sure that I was a good candidate for a home birth. So we did go to a local hospital for the first 20 weeks. And every single time my husband and I left our 10, 15 minute, very quick, very checkbox appointments, we felt very processed and very uncared for and very just, my thought was, previously before I got pregnant with Io, I helped raise a lot of my siblings. And so I did not think I wanted to be a mom. I was like, I've done this. I've helped raise siblings. I know what this is like. We're good. I don't need this in my life. But my husband's very nurturing and would kind of say things every now and then, and he didn't push me, but I knew that he wanted to be a parent. So eventually when my hormones went wild and I was like, okay, maybe one. I knew that when I finally made the choice to do that, it had to be in a setting that was caring and important and, intimate. Like I really wanted an intimate setting, which I personally was not getting at my hospital appointments. And so that was one of the reasons for me. I had known Jennifer before and just like doing community work and just kind of knowing, I didn't know her personally, but I had heard that she was a baby catcher. That's how it was described. And so I had it in the back of my head, if I ever did decide to have a baby, that I would want to reach out to her and just kind of see what that would look like to have somebody like her help me. And then my husband and his sister both were born at birthing centers. He was born in High Point, North Carolina at the birthing center there. I don't know if it's still open. And then his sister was born in Bamberg, which I know is closed, that birthing center, but both home births. So I had his support and he said, of course it's your body, wherever you're comfortable, that's where we'll do it. But I definitely am supporting and leaning towards home birth for us, is what he was saying. And then his mom, she just had good experience and was supportive of it too. So I felt supported in that way. I didn't have too much pushback. Some family members that were like, oh, we all know you're weird anyway. So, it was interesting for them, but they were supportive because I'm typically the one doing kind of the off the wall, off the beaten path thing anyway. So, so yeah, those were some of the reasons that we decided for a home birth.
Supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't always see that. So
And
walk us through.
Oh, I was going to say, and a supportive partner.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Huge.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what that birthing experience was like for you. If someone comes up to you and says like, oh, you had a home birth, I'm thinking about home birth, like,
yeah,
what would you want a family to know that had never experienced a home birth before?
Well, first of all, I'll just plug Jennifer. If she has the room and if they're appropriate, I would definitely go with her. She's extremely knowledgeable and compassionate. You can just feel that she cares. Like you can feel it, right? But if she's not available, I would encourage that person to make sure they have a connection with the person that's going to be in that space with them when they bring a human into the world. So that's important first and foremost, really. And then one thing that I thought about a lot during my pregnancy was I believe that midwives and folks that do that work do the absolute best they can to make it accessible to everyone. I know there's scholarships, there's sliding fee scale, and there's all kind of different things, but I would encourage folks in my life that I know who wanted to do this to try to seek those things out, because I don't think midwifery services are always financially accessible to folks. My husband and I were fortunate, since we both work full time, both have decent jobs, we were able to, pay Jennifer and pay on time and do what we needed to do around that. And I know that's like a form of class privilege that we both have to have been able to do that. So I would encourage folks to, if they do want to have a home birth, start to look around and see, even though our system is not the best in so many ways, and that's an understatement, I would encourage like doing research and looking around for ways to cover it and pay for it, because personally, I feel like a home birth, especially for a person of color, is safer than hospital, because the disparities in hospitals are super high for like Black women, Black birthing people of color, that was another reason I wanted to do it at home, because, if there's a risk involved to having a baby, right?
Yeah, no matter what.
Yeah, there's a risk, right? And so if I'm going to take a risk, I'd rather do it in a setting where I know I'm going to be cared for. And statistically, from what I saw at that time, now these numbers might not be the same anymore, but at that time, I felt like my risk was better taken at home than in a hospital. So I would, ultimately, I guess I'm saying for somebody who wants to do this, do research, see what works for you, see what's best for you. And then you want to kind of know my birth story. Was that a part of the question too?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to share it,
I don't mind. Yeah, and Jennifer, I am more than happy for you to like plug in any tidbits that.
I'll speak back up for you.
Okay, thank you.
I have to say, like, being able to serve Mila as a friend was also like a huge positive for me. Not often do we get to serve our clients, but we don't always get to serve our friends. Right. And so Mila and I run in some of the same circles. We've done Girls Rock together throughout in the community, and so it was a huge privilege to be able to be there. And
same, it was a privilege for me. It was great.
We love each other, guys. What can we say?
We do.
Adorable.
Tell us about Io.
I will. So basically, my sweet Io, just like now, he was like ready to go. His due date was February 12th, but February 3rd at 4 a.m. That was a Sunday morning. I started having contractions. We thought it was Braxton Hicks because it was 9 days too soon. So I thought, this can't be right. So I had, for the past maybe 8 weeks of my pregnancy, had been using Hypnobabies to, do some deep breathing, to do visualizations. Like, I bought the program. I think Jennifer had recommended it. So I got the online program and was working my way through it for the 8 weeks. And so when the contractions started, I immediately started to do my bubble of peace, like they teach you, in the breathing. I had an app, I think the Hypnobabies app, where I could kind of time my contractions and, see if, how far apart they were. And they were, it was initially like every 3 minutes for 90 minutes at a time. And I thought, oh gosh, something's happening. I don't know what. So eventually I think Mike, my husband, texted Jennifer, was like, hey, we're kind of early, but this is her timing. This is what's going on. And I think Jennifer texted him something back like, yeah, y'all are having a baby today. Get ready. And so she had brought the birthing pool, I think 8 weeks prior or so, 6 weeks. So he immediately started filling it up in the bedroom, getting the towels down, all the awesome instructions she had provided along the course of the pregnancy as far as getting the bed prepared and all that. He started doing that, getting everything ready while I worked my way through the beginning stages of labor. And so I think even that day too, Jennifer had a lot, she's a very busy person. I don't know how she does everything she does, but she does it. And she's always
direct. That's how.
Yeah, it's amazing. But I think she was either teaching a class or doing a play or some other.
I was doing a play. I have a little bit of a theater habit, and I had to back up for her that day.
Yep, Alex.
But I will never forget Mila's birth story either, because I had the unwitting, like, the stage manager, who was all of like 20 years old. I put the phone right by the side stage and I said, give me a signal if this name comes up. And his face, like, in the wings of the theater, was like, and so I went over and I was able to come off stage for that particular play, and I spoke to Mike, and he was so chill, because we had talked about it, and we had talked about like what early labor looks like and what active labor looks like, and he was like, we're still early, so he knew exactly. So I had my backup go and
it was great. She was great. Yeah, she was wonderful. She came and took my blood pressure and was just kind of monitoring and making sure baby's heart was good, my heart was good, that I was progressing safely, that we didn't have any hiccups. I think she might have been there for an hour or two, not too long, but she was, a great person to be there while Jennifer was making her way. And then when she got there, I remember, so in Hypnobabies, we're taught a lot of listening to your body, moving the way your body needs you to, doing exactly what your body's prompting you to do. And so I did a lot of that. And then Jennifer would periodically monitor heartbeat to make sure the position I was in was not lowering the baby's heartbeat or speed it up, just making sure what I was doing was working for baby too. So a lot of times squatting like my ancestors in the birthing pool, a lot of time on all fours, and so fast forward, so this is all day Sunday. Fast forward Monday at about, I'd say 1:45 a.m. We're all exhausted. I know Jennifer's exhausted. Like, she's been with me for about 12, 13 hours at that point. Like, you know.
I don't even remember your birth being that long, Mila.
It was 20 hours.
What?
Yes.
Really?
And this is no meds, by the way. I chose not to do any medication, anything, just willpower and breathing here, and channeling my ancestors, because this is how they did it. So I was like, this is how I'm going to do it. And so finally, a quarter to 1 a.m., you know, I'm still squatting. He's low, and I will never forget this. Jennifer goes, okay, do a lunge for me. And I'm like, a lunge? What is a lunge? Because, you know, I'm kind of out of my mind. I've been like pushing this kid for like 19 and a half hours at that point. She goes, do a lunge for me. And I'm in the pool and I'm like, what? And so, you know, she's like, a lunge. I do a lunge and I feel him shift. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, okay, your next contraction, I want you to do another lunge. I'm like, okay. Because in my mind, I'm like, he really shifted when I did that. So I do another lunge at the next contraction and his head just pops out. And I start screaming. And when I'm screaming,
I don't remember that either.
I think to myself, somebody's screaming. Are my neighbors okay? And then I'm like, oh God, that's me. Oh my God, you know, just like out of body total experience when his head pops out. And then so, you know, right before then I asked him to get into the pool with me, which was another huge thing. I do not think they allow partners to get in the pools with birthing people at hospitals. I needed him in the pool with me to hold me up and to be there. I did not want to be alone. I want him in the pool with me. So he was in by that point. So he's holding one elbow. Jennifer's not in the pool, mind you. She's outside of it, but she's holding the other elbow. They're holding me up. And then, you know, finally, Io pops out. Mike and I exchange this look that I'll never forget. We're looking at him, looking at each other. Jennifer's like, you know, don't pull him out yet. Hold on, because his cord's kind of wrapped around him. And so we jokingly tell people she kind of Rubik's cubed him. Yeah. She Rubik's cubed our baby, untangled him, and then holds him up. And that was just, you know, for anyone who has had a child and has no matter where you've had your child, you know, home, hospital, wherever, that moment of just like seeing that human you grew for that long time, that's not something I can put into words. So, you know, just think about that moment in your soul and then know that that's what was going on with me in that moment. So it was interesting, not eventful for the most part, but that last 20-30 minute stretch was like kind of eventful. But it was a great experience. I am not, let me knock on wood, not planning to do that again. Because like I said, my quota was 0. I've exceeded it by having 1. We're good. I don't have anything to prove. But if I could go back and do that experience itself again with Jennifer, the support, with my husband's support, just everything that happened, absolutely would do it again. Yeah, it was, I think, as successful as it could have been for a first time parent, you know, and someone who was doing it at home. So yeah, it was
amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Kind of cool.
So cool. I love that we can share this together, because I can sing back up and say that just I don't remember screaming. I don't remember it taking that long. I mean, obviously first time moms are long, but yeah, she made it look so easy. I know it wasn't easy, but she made it look so easy. And all of that has to do with her preparation and her mindset.
Like, I walk 2 miles a day, at least 3 or 4 days a week, 2 miles a day on the canal, so I could like actually get to the mile marker and turn around. I ate as many leafy greens as I could. I did smoothies. I got blood builders, which are organic iron pills that also helped. I did tear and was sewn up. So, you know, I did the best I could. Huh?
At home.
At home, yes. Was sewn up at home, which also needs to be accessible to folks.
Yeah.
We were fortunate enough to be able to do that, but I don't know if that's like something, I don't know. Anyway, a lot of it needs to be accessible is what I'd say. But yeah, was sewn at home. But yeah, I did. I everything Jennifer told me to do in sessions, I would take it to heart and just like, I took it so seriously. And I think that's important if you're going to like create a human, everything you can possibly do to make that the best environment. I think it's important to do.
Because it wasn't any mistake that you did that well. It wasn't any mistake that you were able. Some people are given the good fortune of just having good genetics and are just able to fold themselves into an easy birth. But you worked hard and you exercised and you
Mm-hmm.
mentally prepared and you did everything that you possibly could. And on the other end of the spectrum for that, some people do all of that preparation and are still met with complications and aren't
Mm-hmm.
able to do it.
Right.
So, but you should give yourself all the credit for everything that you prepared for. And I know you do. I know you're proud of yourself, and you should be. He's amazing. And we don't always talk about, in Girls Rock and everything, we also don't always talk about commenting on people's appearance.
No,
But
he's
this
cute.
kid, y'all, is gorgeous. He is so gorgeous.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much
He
for
is.
sharing that. I know that birth stories are special and sacred, and we really appreciate you being willing to share that with
Of
us.
course.
So at this point, I'm going to interject our keyword. Normally, I make a little bit more fanfare of it, but I want to respect your moment. But our keyword is comfort. So in home birth settings, we are often referred to more as comfort measures versus like pain relief. So our keyword for our home birth session is comfort. You can find the Google form in the comments on our Facebook page, on our Facebook, whatever this is called, post. I don't know.
Yeah.
On this video.
On our page.
And we still are not quite done. I have one more question for Mila, but I'm going to remind everybody, if you are just joining us, comment target or travel system on our live in order to get a live entry. That's a bonus entry in addition to the Google form where you're going to use that keyword of comfort. So Mila, I'm going to take advantage of your extensive knowledge and background in the mental health field. So like we said, she's a professional counselor, a licensed professional counselor. Talk to us about the impact that birth experience in general can have on our mental health.
Well, I mean, and Jennifer, please jump in. Well, while I was pregnant, I did a lot of reading about postpartum depression.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be candid, like I have a depression diagnosis. I have some trauma that has like shaped like how I handle things sometimes, and of course working through it. So therapists should be seeing therapists, truly. And so I think I would add that to like somebody's treatment. If they know they have a history of maybe some mental health issues or difficulties, those hormones going haywire and going wackadoodle are only going to exacerbate it, truly. And that was my experience for a hot minute. Now, one thing that Jennifer did that was extremely helpful was, and I don't know, we encapsulate is the word. We encapsulated my placenta because of everything that, a birthing person's body is making during that time. It's good nutrients for the baby. Jennifer explained to me in the session that, she offered it. It wasn't, she just said, this is an option if you want it, knowing your history and you might need support mental health wise. This is an option for you. And so that's what I ended up doing. She encapsulated it. I took one a day, I think 2 a day to start, then 1 a day. And then when I went back to work at that 8-week mark, just to kind of offset the sadness of not being with Io every second of the day, I would take some to work and help to keep my mood going there too. So I think just I think for folks who are going to have babies, being mindful of their mental health history, even if they have not had a diagnosis, asking those questions of their primary care physician or their midwife, knowing that postpartum depression is real, can happen, that also there can be some grief that happens, grieving like what your life was before you had a needy human in your world, grieving maybe if your body shape changes and you're not happy with the way your body looks at the moment. There's some grief there too. So just being mindful of those things. And then there, in my profession, there can be stigma around mental health, like not from us, but from different family members and just different folks that kind of have a stigma around mental health. But, I would encourage folks not to be afraid if you're noticing like your moods are bottoming out or you're having like some thoughts of like wanting to kill yourself or your baby or harm or anything like that. Or if you're just like not getting out of bed. That was me for about a week. I just could not get out of bed, and because of my history, I knew what was going on, and Mike recognized it and got, he was able to help me. But, if you're noticing that your mood and things like that are changing and everything's kind of gray, I would encourage folks to like, okay, stigma be damned, ask for help, even if it's not a professional, if you can tell a family member, like,
well, nodding our
yeah, like if you can tell a family member, I'm having these thoughts, like something's not right, ask for help. Let somebody know, like, what 9 times out of 10, if that person has also had a baby, they're going to get it. Like, yeah, I remember it got a little fuzzy there for me too. And just make sure you get help and just be open and honest about where your mental health state is, you know, because yeah, it can get rocky.
Yeah. Well, for anyone, and I talk about mental health with my clients every time, you know, in every visit or at least at some point throughout their pregnancy. And what I see is a very dangerous ideology that we have in this culture is that the idea of too blessed to be depressed. That is something that is very dangerous, and it is very pervasive in the South, especially when it comes to having a child. So you've had a baby, you're fine, your baby's fine, you should be grateful. That is very dangerous. There is clinical depression. There are chemical imbalances that happen in our minds after we have babies, and then there are exacerbating factors all around us. So I think, and a lot of things that we've talked about here today, you know, there need to be policy changes. Women need to know that that there are actually some home birth midwives that take Medicaid. And going back to what you said earlier, Mila, that they are, a lot of us don't know that, but there are some midwives that take Medicaid. But we need to look at other policy changes. I think 2 of the main ones that I can think of are that perinatal psychiatric care should be integrated into maternal care, but it's not. And we need to do what we can to fix the continuity of care there. And also, second to that, but not too far second, is pelvic floor care. We also need that. And another is lactation support. You know, so in other countries, guys, like this is all midwifery and this is all maternal care and this is what you get. In ours, we're struggling because everything is privatized and everything is chopped up individually, and you have to go and seek it all out yourself, a la carte. And that's not fair, especially when it comes to a depressed person who can't always seek these resources for themselves.
Right.
If you're having struggles with your breastfeeding, your baby's not gaining weight, you feel like you're broken, that's going to exacerbate your depression. If you have had a traumatic birth and you don't have social support, that's going to exacerbate your depression. If you feel like your vagina is broken because you haven't had the pelvic care and the pelvic floor therapy that you've needed this entire time, and you don't know where your sex life's going, that could exacerbate your depression. All of these things, we need to be taking care of the whole woman. And once she has delivered a baby, we are not to say, goodbye, see you in 6 weeks, where we'll talk about your birth control. That is not comprehensive maternal care, and that we need comprehensive maternal care in this country.
Amen. Preaching.
No, not soapbox. I'm sorry.
One thing I'll say about midwifery care, just speaking of Jennifer's care, is even though it is like you got to piece it together, she was super helpful in helping me to piece some things together. Like for lactation care, she made some recommendations, and then I looked, based on my insurance, went to where it would work for me. But I didn't even know where to start with that. But based on Jennifer having resources and having, kind of providing that kind of, layout for where I could go for different things was helpful. So I guess that's another benefit of midwifery care is, yes, we have to piece it together for now and it sucks, but I at least had a person who, had a good rapport with these providers, could speak to their, their legitimacy. So I had her to help me with that. So cool and yay.
Yay.
Cool and yay.
You're the best.
Okay, Jennifer, we have a Facebook question for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Or do you want me to?
Oh, do you know which one we're talking about?
Patty's?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask. Patty was saying, I have a question. What about maternal age over 35? Still a good candidate if all other factors are healthy?
Yes, still a good candidate. I think
I was 34, by the way. I was 34.
Hey.
I mean,
and a first-time mom.
what's that?
She's 34 and a first-time mom, which sometimes in the hospital they might be looking at differently.
Yeah, and when we say in the hospital, we're still looking at those things when you're at home. So let's remind everybody that as far as South Carolina goes, we are required to work with we are required to send you for 2 visits with a medical provider throughout your pregnancy. With me in my practice, I work I work very closely with that medical provider so that I have a consulting relationship with them. So you're seen once at the beginning of your pregnancy to say, yes, you're a good candidate for out of hospital birth. And then you're seen the last 6 weeks of your pregnancy to say, yes, you have remained a good candidate for out of hospital birth. Also, here are prescriptions for emergency medications in case you are to need them. So in the meantime, anywhere in between, if something arises, we have established care with an MD who can write prescriptions, who can make recommendations, and who we can consult or refer to if anything varies outside of our scope of practice. So with that age, with age in mind, yes, we are making sure that they still consult with a doctor and they are offered the same genetic testing that they would be in the hospital. And we can't counsel them on that testing and which tests are more accurate than others and which tests are more appropriate. And I have to say, there's some really rude terms around there about women who are over 35. Terms like geriatric pregnancy and elder prima gravida, and they will just throw those terms at you all together, and those are awful. They're awful, and so I think that women who are over 35 who are coming into pregnancy, I think they're great candidates for out of hospital birth. They're great candidates for midwifery care because, again, going back to treating the whole woman, someone who is 35 has gotten used to their life as an adult for 15 years more than someone who has a baby at 20 years old. And so they are going to need a little bit more whole woman support emotionally and socially about how this is going to change their life. So yes, don't let age get in the way of just exploring your option to see if midwifery care is right for you.
Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was also hoping that we could change the term incompetent cervix.
Yeah, incompetent cervix, failure to progress. Yeah, there are a lot of terms out there. If we transfer appropriately from her home birth, no matter how great she is or how it is just her option to come in for an epidural for pain relief and then she beautifully pushes her baby out, it's called a failed home birth. There's just no such thing. There are all these medical terms around there. If you make an informed choice to decline something, it's called refusing it. There are all of these medical terms out there that aren't always their power in words, and there's some of that connotation that we need to have another conversation about, is what I'm saying.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Mila, is there any last thoughts or words that you would like to add to our discussion today? Maybe one last chance before we wrap things up.
I know. I don't think so. Thanks for having me. Hopefully what I've shared has been insightful and helpful. And, if folks do have questions, I guess I'll comment on the live stream and they can ask me if they want. I'm open. I just don't know what else to add.
That's great. Just any last thoughts from you? I did have a question about COVID and pregnancy, but I feel like you've kind of covered that. It seems to me like if you are a pregnant person right now, general CDC guidelines and recommendations are about standard. Anything special that you're telling, outside of the norm?
Yeah, some people are, some doctors are making recommendations that women try to seriously consider quarantining at 36 weeks just to help to limit your exposure so that you are a much lower risk for COVID-19 when you are safe to deliver. But I would refer you to the CDC. That's where a lot of my notes and recommendations that I was going to talk about today, came from. And one of those had to do with the fact that, yes, we are seeing that that women who are, or pregnant people who are COVID positive do have a higher risk of complications, and they do have a higher risk of the possibility of being intubated, but their mortality risk is about the same as people, non-pregnant persons. Okay. So that's, somewhat positive. And we just, there has been some information coming out of New York that sometimes COVID-19 can present as atypical preeclampsia, cause complications such as that. So we do need to be very careful to make sure that people are taking this seriously. But we have seen that the transmission to baby, the likelihood of that is very low. And even the CDC of a COVID, with the COVID-19 positive person, they're not recommending against rooming in. Good. So you have to look at home birth as a big old session of rooming in, so you would have to be in contact with your medical provider, not just your midwife, but you would need a team of medical providers and your midwife talking over your options as far as home birth goes, is in regards to COVID-19.
COVID-19 diagnosis exclude anyone from home birth? Like if someone contracted it either during pregnancy or prior to pregnancy, does that impact their ability to deliver at home?
It would impact people differently from midwife to midwife. So you would need to talk to your medical care provider about that and see, what their comfort level is and what their consulting relationship is with a medical provider who can make recommendations with you on that.
Gotcha. All right. Any final words? I know we've kind of run over time I thought we'd run a little long, but we've gone a little longer.
Sorry.
No, we're so glad to have, we're so glad that you had the time for us and that we can kind of spill into your afternoon a little bit and that didn't disrupt your schedule at all. And we really appreciate all of advocacy work. Do we have any last questions on
Rachel?
Facebook?
I have one last thing to say as in regard to policy. Now is the time. Here's something that's coming up right now. We have some legislation that is coming up to revise midwives regulations within SEDHEC. There has been some rumor that midwives have led this charge. In fact, I am a member of the Palmetto Association of Licensed Midwives, and I can assure you that no midwives have pushed this expansion of practice or expansion of scope of practice. So where it would be great if we could allow sutures at home for women and mothers and IV fluids, those are all great, but we did not ask for them. This is something that has been written by DHEC and it is being pushed out there. So I just need to say to everyone that midwives have not led this charge of expanding our scope of practice. We, in fact, are happy with our regulations as they are right now. And we would encourage consumers to be very involved in the process of making sure that midwives are still accessible and that we are not prohibited out of practice. And then there's another aspect of policy that we need to look at in the perinatal levels of care, and that midwives need to be able to transfer their clients and their patients appropriately into the hospitals. Right now, the law is set within the hospital systems that other hospitals can, lower levels of care can, prisons can, and infirmaries from colleges can, but they exclude midwives. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
So we need to be talking about policy changes, and I'm a little busy catching babies. I can't say that I am the current activist to speak to at this season in my life, with my family and virtually schooling kids and everything. And so I would refer you to the Palmetto Association of Licensed Midwives, and see what you can do for them as a consumer, and write letters to your legislators, and be a voice to make sure that we continue to have access to licensed midwives.
Thank you. Yes, we will have a flyer from PALM, the Palmetto Association of Licensed Midwives, in your swag bag with more information about some of those regulatory points that Jennifer was talking about, and also an upcoming board meeting to discuss some of those. I will be there on my own self, not as a representative of Love Your Birth, because sometimes we have different hats and we do different things at different times. But yeah, as someone who has had some cesareans as well, I know we kind of fight on that same team when it comes to VBACs and getting that access appropriately. So that meeting is coming. There'll be information in your swag bag. So if you don't already have a ticket for a swag bag, get your ticket so that you can get that flyer and get that information. I think that wraps us up.
Could we include the information that Jennifer just said of where to go? The comments later?
In the comments, yeah.
Sure.
Drop that in there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, Mila, Jennifer, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and just your presence here today. We are so grateful for both of you. And to everyone watching, thank you for hanging out with us for our extended edition of the Love Your Birth Expo this year.
Good to see your face, Mila.
Yours too. I want to go on the record to say that I love Jennifer. Now it's recorded. Now there's no doubt. Thank y'all.
Love you too.
So much. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks for having us. Take care.